Okay, now the next method, wealth creation vehicle, is index funds. So what are index funds? So we looked at stocks initially, first of all, and stock is one company. An index fund is multiple companies together, okay? So the way to view it, it's kind of like investing into a team versus an individual player, right? And so instead of focusing on and investing in an individual person, you're investing in a team, and that's what an index fund is. So a classic example of that is the S&P 500, which hopefully most of you have heard of. If you haven't, that's one for you to keep your eye on. So what are the pros and the cons of investing into index funds? So it's actually a pretty good method of investment. So the pros is that it's lower risk. Why? Because if we look at the S&P 500, which is the 500 most successful companies in America, pulled together in this one fund, well, you're spreading your risk across 500 companies. And that's inherently lower risk. Why? Well, it's much lower risk than putting all your money into one company, right? And that company, who knows what can happen with that individual company. And so the pros of investing into an index fund is that inherently has lower risk. You're diversified, right? Because you are inherently investing into a team versus an individual player, right? You're investing into multiple companies in one go versus just one company. Another massive pro with this is that it has a very low barrier to entry. So if we go back and we think about investing into an individual stock, the problem that a lot of people face when they want to buy a company stock is that they need to do they need to do a serious amount of research. So a perfect example of someone that is incredible at that is Warren Buffett, right? That's what he's done, right? So he's invested into individual stocks of individual companies, but they carried out intense due diligence and study and analysis of the companies that he was buying into. And the great thing about an index fund is that you can get a lot of the benefits that you get from investing into an individual stock, but without the risk and without the study that you need to do. Why? Because you know that you're going to get a return based on historical returns. And I'll tell you what they are in a second, but there's a low barrier to entry. So you don't need to do that much study in order to actually get the returns for investing into a index fund. Now, what are the cons with this? What do you need to be aware of when it comes to the cons of an index fund? Well, you do get relatively and comparatively slower growth in comparison to other investment strategies, although it does beat the ones that you've already mentioned, bar being very smart if you bought a specific company. That's the only caveat, is you can get much higher returns with that. But there are cons to that you need to be very well aware of. So the cons of investing into an index fund is you get slower growth, which means that you need to really develop long-term patience. So what average returns are you looking at? Well, over the last, nearly 100 years. So if we look at the S&P 500 since 1926, if you'd have been investing into it, you'd be getting an average of 10% per year